We're live. It is 7:33. I already have a poll up. so I did a little pregame, a little prep because I'm late at 7:33. So I want to, we want to come in swinging. Excuse me. The question for today, what we're going to talk about is nitrous oxide. And the thumbnail that I have up is a nitrous plate. And what it is if most people are familiar with the nitrous plate that they put between the carburetor and the intake manifold, and then they have two solenoids and they have jets there, and it injects nitrous and fuel, combines those, sprays those under the carburetor, and how much ever nitrous you add, it adds power goes through the intake manifold, down in the cylinder head, and then down into the engine, and voila, magic happens, and all of a sudden we have lots more power. On this particular one, it's a similar deal, although we don't have a carbureted motor. This one was an LS motor with an LS EFI manifold. I think this one was a fast. And then what we had is a plate that sandwiches between the throttle body and the intake manifold. And so then you have the same thing. You have a nitrous line and a fuel line with jets, solenoids, all that stuff really is the same. And all you're doing is injecting the nitrous into this EFI intake manifold after the throttle body. So we can talk about, irrespective of the fact, as we've talked about this before, irrespective of the fact that you're injecting nitrous into the manifold that was really designed just to flow air. And so irrespective of the fact of distribution, do you guys think that it's better? And this is our poll for tonight. Do you think it's better to inject nitrous before the throttle body, let's say, on a fuel injected motor, or after the throttle body is kind of the question. You guys can let me know in the answer too, or let me know in the comments. Let me know your answer in the comments and tell me which one of those things do you prefer. Do you think it's a good idea? But that's what I want to talk about tonight, because there are pluses and minuses both ways. We see, if we go back to the carbureted discussion where we have injecting nitrous and fuel in a simple nitrous plate, very, very easy. They're usually adjustable from 75 to 125 or more horsepower. You put a plate on, and that was the first system that I ran in this Camaro that didn't even belong to me, belonged to my brother, and then my friend, my best friend Harold at the time. And if you put a plate on there, you just add it. It adds a bunch of fuel. It adds a bunch of nitrous. You nail the button, and just all sorts of wonderful things happen. It makes your small block all of a sudden and even a fairly mild small block. This thing it had a little cam in it, but it still had iron heads on it and stuff. So it was nothing special. But still, adding the nitrous, when you have a, let's say, 300 horsepower motor or 350 horsepower motor, and you have 100 and you add an extra 100, that's a pretty big gain in performance. And it's very, very noticeable. And so that works very well. And that would be after the throttle blades, obviously, on a carburetor. On this injected motor, we've run nitrous at various places. We've run it, between a turbo and the throttle body. We've run it just before the throttle body. We've run it like this plate after the throttle body. We've run them on fogger setups, individual fogger setups going into the manifold, all of that stuff. And so I think that the discussion on nitrous, if we're talking about, okay, well, if we move the nitrous, one of the discussions would be, one of the comments, I'm sure I haven't taken a look at them, but one of the comments would be, okay, if you can move the nitrous closer to the valve and you hit the button, obviously you get rid of some of whatever that time delay would be between you activating the nitrous and then the nitrous getting into the combustion chamber. So you're minimizing some of that by changing that distance. As fast as those things are traveling, the amount of gain that you can get from a change in position there, like might be able to get a gain from putting it in front of the turbo to putting it in the intake manifold, or down right at the head port and intake manifold interchange. You might see a noticeable gain there. But going from very, just in front of the throttle body to just behind the throttle body, I don't know that you'd even be able to measure the on time, when it hits. I don't know if you'd even be able to measure what kind of gain you would get from that. And it would certainly be dependent on RPM, because the RPM would dictate the speed of all of those things that are going into the combustion chamber. And so I don't know that you'd be able to measure that. And, maybe if you're looking for hundredths or something like that, that there's something there. And so then the ultimate thing obviously would be the fogger setup, like where it's down as close as it can be into the injecting it right into the back of the valve. That would be good. And if you could get the nitrous line to go right down there, or have it be a DI setup where it goes right into the combustion chamber, then you could get rid of all of that perceived lag, I guess. Excuse me. And then you don't have to worry about that part of it. And so it's positioned relative to that, and for curing lag would be one thing that could be discussed. The other thing is, do you think that makes any difference in power? Hello, baby. Hello, baby. Hello. You want to come up? You want to come up and say hi? Well, come up here. Come on. Come on. Hello. What are you doing? Are you keeping everybody in check down there and making sure all the squirrels are running away and all the cats and stuff? And all the kitties, huh? Hello. I know. Okay, go get those kitties. So if we can inject it like, that sort of change in distance from before the throttle body to after the throttle body, do we see any kind of gain in power? Is there, one of the things to consider might be that there's more time, let's say, to get charge cooling. But in the charge cooling effect that we've measured, and I've done this a number of times, the charge cooling effect that we measure would be greater for an NA motor, obviously, than it would be for a turbo motor. So if you add 100 horsepower worth of nitrous to a 400 horsepower NA motor, the change that you would get, the amount of cold versus the amount of hot, would be more so favored for the nitrous setup, because you're also getting fuel too, because fuel is also going to help cool it. It's not negative 129, obviously, but there's extra fuel and you get charge cooling from that, which is kind of why when we test carbureted stuff and we have a carburetor on top of a manifold, we get charge cooling, we get additional power from that. So you could argue that, well, there's more time for the nitrous and the fuel to cool things off, and that might be the case. The one thing I have to say is on the turbo combination and on the NA combination, the amount of charge temperature that you have on the turbo combination under boost is going to be a lot higher. And so if you're cooling that, it's easier to cool hotter stuff than, to make a change in hotter stuff as a percentage than it is to change something that's colder already. Because it's hard to get it down past, down below zero or whatever, or even down below ambient. Although a lot of the carbureted things, when we're running them and we measure the temperature in the intake manifold, we see charge temperatures that are below ambient, just from the fuel cooling offered by the carburetors. That you'll see condensation and stuff on aluminum intake manifolds and stuff. So it's pretty cool. But would we see any kind of change in performance from the us combining the nitrous and fuel in a single fogger nozzle, like right before the throttle body versus right after the throttle body, like on this plate? Now, honestly, I don't think we would. I don't think that you'd see a change in performance, really. And given that short distance, I also don't think you'd see much of a change in the response rate of, activating it. Now it just hits immediately. I don't think you'd see that. Here's what I do think you see. And this is more of also of a what if kind of thing. The reason that I would favor on a throttle body application, the reason that I would favor putting it in front of the throttle body is because if you had a nitrous solenoid or a fuel solenoid stuck open, you could simply shut the throttle blade. And so you would stop overrunning the motor, if that happens. Obviously, the odds of that happening are very, very slim. You could also stick the throttle body for that matter. But it is kind of a safety valve, and that's one thing that people would argue. But again, you're arguing like people are prone to do on the internet. You're arguing the what if scenario for something that the odds of it happening are very, very small. Because look at all the plate setups that are run under a carburetor, and you could close the air to the setup and kind of restrict it, but we know if you have nitrous going in there that it has oxygen molecules and it will continue to run. So that's just one reason why I would think about maybe putting it there. And since it doesn't matter either way, maybe on the photo that I'm showing you with the plate setup, I think that was an NOS plate, and it's pretty cool. Maybe just for ease of installation would be would be cool to put it there. The other thing that you can do, obviously, is which a lot of guys do, is you can hide it somewhere. You can hide it inside the manifold, and we've seen a lot of that stuff where you run a dummy line, run it through a vacuum port or something, and put it inside. And then if you're trying to be super tricky, then you're not worried really about the throttle body thing, and then it's more of a stealth kind of deal. And you're like, oh yeah, this is all motor. Yeah, it's all motor with a little blue bottle, or purple or white, or whoever bottle you're using. So that would be another consideration. So I think that all of these things, the reasons that you would pick what you're picking, that reason might outweigh a lot of these other considerations for, like I said, for the safety thing that I was talking about, for how quickly it hits, all of that. Particularly with a turbo, we get guys that are talking about, and I haven't tested it yet, and I want to, running the water methanol in front of the turbo. And then, because you can change how effective the turbo is by putting cold stuff into there. And kind of the same thing with nitrous. But I would argue on a nitrous application, and where we did it right before the throttle body on the nitrous application, because it definitely will hit earlier, because you have the whole distance, especially if you have an intercooler, you have the whole distance of before the turbo all the way through all the discharge tube and then into the intake manifold. Whereas if you just put it into the intake manifold before or after the throttle body, it is going to hit. There is a measurable difference in time from all of that length of tubing going through front mounted intercooler and all that stuff before the turbo. And so if you want it to hit and come up and have the turbo come up right away, I almost always recommend guys doing it, in the manifold, because it will hit sooner. If you're trying to spool the turbo up, let's get the party started, right? Let's get it going right away. So we'll see what you guys got going on for tonight. Eric, Nova's in the house. Sticks, Jordan, I would say after the throttle body, so you don't freeze the throttle body open. A lot of ATVs and motorcycles have coolant running to the carburetor to keep them from icing over. That's a good point. Of course, it's better to inject nitrous over having a turbo. I love my nitrous outlet LT1 plate. Yeah, there's lots of different plates available. They made them for the TPI stuff. They made them for the LS stuff. Whenever somebody came out with something, I think that they probably made, I can't remember if I'm sure I've not tested one, but they probably even made TBI plate nitrous setups too, which would be good, because those motors really need more power. I was like a fogger kit. Yep, those were good. Supposedly, I don't know if I believe it, the closer to the valve, the more nitrous the engine can ingest. I think in what somebody was saying on here before, whoever the guy is from England, I went up and did a search on his stuff. But he was saying that you wanted to actually inject the nitrous into the combustion chamber in a liquid state. Because if you can get it before it phase changes, it takes up less room. So you get more nitrous in there theoretically, and have it not reduce the airflow was kind of the thing. That would be an interesting test. I'd like to see lines run down the intake port all the way, just basically so when the valve opens, it just injects it right in the combustion chamber. And I think that would be a good thing to do, and have it stay liquid the whole time. Although I don't know how it's going to stay liquid past the solenoid. We'd have to see how long it will stay liquid in the tubes. Put it in the supercharger. I love my 2-stage plate kit, 250 in each kit. I'm going to hit a 209 shot on each kit. Okay. 209, that's oddly specific. Yes, that was Brady. Always seems to come up and visit when I'm online. I think he likes doing the live feed. Can you recommend before or after an LSA supercharger? I think I would put it after the supercharger, for the same reason that it will reduce the flow. It will reduce the airflow before the supercharger, but it will have cooling. So you'd have to see where that crossover point is. Like the supercharger shadow that beat the GLH. I'm not familiar with this. You mean a factory supercharged shadow? They had turbo shadows, I know. Having played nozzle systems at And before the throttle body, what I can tell you from experience, once you start really hitting the screws, 175 horsepower with a plenum ram style fuel distribution problems. Yeah, and we've gone over that in videos too. I did a distribution video showing what the distribution issues for, trying to get a bunch of it to go through manifolds that can otherwise be treacherous is just kind of not a good idea. One way to get around that on fuel injected motors and in manifolds that are designed to flow airflow is that you just have it inject the nitrous and then you add the fuel with the injectors. That does two things. One is that you can do a preemptive strike on the fuel so you don't get a momentary lean condition, which we see a lot on the dyno. And then also the injectors are down at the port, so they're not hurting airflow. And they also don't have distribution issues that way. So you can usually get away with more nitrous just injecting nitrous on a setup like that and injecting if you have enough injector to inject the extra fuel. Fuel will start to puddle and flow weirdly and fall out of suspension. Unlike carb intakes, LS manifolds don't flow well wet. Yeah, I agree. I think we've run 150 shots on them, and I don't normally go more than that. I have a dry fogger on the fender well that is 18 inches from the throttle blade, and it hits hard. NA small block Ford, and the inlet air temperature is in the lower intake like a stock Fox. Goes from 160 on the lead to 40 at the strip. Is there a way to reduce nitrous pressure from falling off after the hit? Larger tank, larger supply lines. I don't know that we've ever data logged the drop in pressure from it losing the supply of nitrates that it's using during the run. I'd like to see what that is and see if it loses pressure. I mean, it definitely should lose some depending on how much you're using. If you have a 15-pound bottle and you're during that pull, you're losing 2 pounds or 3 pounds. I don't know how much you're using, but what your shot is and how long you're on it. But if you're losing that much, you would basically have to reheat the bottle to get that temperature back up or get the pressure back up. So planning on doing nitrous eventually, maybe next year. My engine can probably ingest more nitrous than I'd be comfortable with. Yeah, but Sean, even 100 shot, like 100 extra horsepower is really fun for a while. And then you're like, you know what, 150 really kind of sounds right now. It's just like boost. Who tunes after mods? You have to do a tune after you make modifications. Just start small. Just be warned, it's addictive. Yeah, just like boost. I know a guy that had 1,000 horsepower shot, but the bumper hitch was not strong enough when he hit the button. He had a 55-gallon tank. 1,000 horsepower shot would be a lot. All I know is I make less horsepower when I adjust nitrous. You see the 2025 SRT4. I haven't seen that. Are they coming out with one? Let's see. Is the 2025 Dodge Neon SRT4 coming back? Well, it looks pretty cool, the big front-mounted intercooler. I kind of like that. Definitely looks like an aftermarket intercooler on there. Let's see here. the true about the 2025 SRT4 is, should that be truth? Maybe it'd be cool. I like that car. I think that those are neat. I would like to design a system that increases the supply pressure through the pole. I have to draft up some ideas. A progressive setup does that. Pulse width modulating the, if you pulse width modulate the solenoid, it will do that. You don't have to change the pressure. You could just change the supply. SRT is dead. SRT Tomahawk. I feel like that was a rumor with a rendering. No way Stellantis would be smart enough to bring back the SRT4. Have you checked out Michigan Motorsports Lumberjack camshaft? I've never heard of that. Is that an LS camshaft? How's our pole doing? Is it better to inject nitrous oxide after the throttle body and closer to the valve? 71% are saying yes. I haven't, Tristan. If you tell me what the specs are, we can kind of give you an idea what it will do. I was just thinking about that. I've never played with it, but yes, it would be great. I haven't seen one. I don't know if I've seen a progressive controller on the dyno to see how smooth the ramp in is. I would imagine it's not going to be like a centrifugal supercharger where the boost increases with RPM. But that would be cool, though. I just don't know on the solenoids, like the flow rate versus the opening rate, you know, in percentage. I just don't know what that is. I've never flowed solenoids. Or if you get around the drop pressure issue with one of those industrial size bottles. Yeah, if you, and a big enough bottle heater to heat it. Yeah, because if we're talking about percentages, so if you have a 10-pound bottle and you're trying to run, let's say a 300 shot or whatever, and let's say that you go through 2 pounds or 3 pounds in a run, as a percentage of the 10-pound bottle, that's a big change. But if you put the feed bottles in there that they use for nitrous fill stations, it's like, let's say it's 50-pound bottle. Then 3 pounds out of the 50 should not get a significant drop in pressure. But you also have to carry a 50-pound bottle. and unfortunately, it doesn't just weigh 50 pounds. Clax, has anyone ever used ACES EFI Jackpot ECU? I never have. I've never tried it. Yeah, Nathan, it would be good to play with it if you could get a progressive system work very well. And maybe you can. I have never tried it. It would have been nice to do that when I did the Big Bang 5.3, the Big Bang motor. Lumberjack cam looks like a Truck Norris 214, 224, 550, 108, 3-bolt pattern. Okay. Yeah, that should be in that ballpark, I think. What does it cost, ET? What is it? What's that cam sell? Near. Oh, that's a cam kit. That's a lot. $349 for a camshaft. I don't even know where I could get a nitrous bottle locally. You just need a bottle, Sean? Or do you need a kit? I was thinking of getting it since it's around $800 and offers stuff that the Holly has. It looks too good to be true. You should also take a look at the Haltech Rebel EFI for a LS, if that's what you have. $549 for a kit, $349 for the cam. Yep. Oh, you need to get your bottle filled. I see, John. No idea where to fill it. Halfway past nowhere. Well, you're halfway there then, right? It's Haltech, Haltech. But you can call it whatever you want. Haltech Rebel. Looks like it's 1400. Rebel LS. Yeah, sometimes performance shops have nitrous fill stations. Some of the guys have gotten themselves in trouble. Just adjusting, making adjustments. Talked to Haltech on Power Tour. It looks like it's a really good setup. I'm going to run one coming up here. I'm going to put one on a junkyard LS. One right to my Corvette is pretty far. Oh, the nitrous fill station. Okay. 408 LS forged and internally balanced, prep for boost, or 496 Mark IV, same setup, prep for boost. Which one will handle more power, more reliable if all is done proper to the max for strength? I don't know. I don't know which one. I would say that the LS block will handle more because that's really what your limit is if you're using a stock block. So if you're using a stock Mark IV block, I'm assuming it's a 4-bolt block. I don't know that you want to run a Mark IV block at the power levels that we run an LS at. But at 1,000 horsepower or something like that, I think either one of those will do it. If you're trying to, like you have, 2,000 or 2,500 horsepower turbo, you need something that's an aftermarket block. 104 from the airport. You just need to run my 5.3 and let me use a BMW pedal on the 3rd gen LS. Just put a carburetor on it then. A carburetor and an MSD ignition controller. And there you go. Although a carburetor, an intake manifold, and the MSD controller, I think you would be at or near the EFI ECU numbers anyway. Assuming you already have the intake. You will have to buy injectors if you're modifying your motor and making more power. I'm surprised at how many times I get asked that question. Like I have a turbo thing. Well, did you run stock injectors? I'm like, you like that's a modification that shouldn't have to be done. Well, you just cheated it because you ran different injectors. Yeah, because we didn't want to burn the motor down. Yeah, because 6733, 2/3 and 1/3 on our nitrous situation. Haltech Rebel. Some of the drag strips fill nitrous. There. Currently making 1,500 from the 408. I have a boost prep 496. Going to sell one of them, both OEM blocks. I guess we'll sell the big block then. At 1,500 on a 408 with a stock block, I think that you're getting near the limit of the block. But I have everything already. I just need an ECU. I got an unlocked ECU for Summit, but the 3rd gens use 9-pin pedals. 4th gen ECU worked perfectly with my car. Okay. Well, it shouldn't be that hard to find from the wrecking yard to find stock computer and harness and the pedal assembly that you need to work. And then you just get a tune from Matt and away you go. Is your red round eye Chevy cammed yet? No, it's not. And I don't have 1540 in it right now. It has. I know, Tim, there does need. Lisa's making dinner right now. Use a direct plate nitrous kit, just 200 shot on my Vortec V3 supercharged Audi EFI 4.2 liter V8 S4. It's fun to run low 8s in the quarter. That's pretty fast. What else is done to that motor? There'll be a bunch of other stuff done to that motor. Is it all-wheel drive too? There's a hook and book. I want to do a progressive controller, 100 shot with a supplementary tank of C16 to feed the nitrous. Lots of guys are doing that. Just run the good fuel when you're on the nitrous. Also want to do flex fuel, but I still want to be able to use nitrous when I have ethanol. We run nitrous with the 85. It's worth getting Gen 4 on my Gen 3 using your 5.3 liter 510 horsepower build. I'm putting new parts in the block. I don't know if I should just use the old rods or get Gen 4s. Gen 4 rods are definitely stronger. So if you're putting something together, I don't know where you're going to get a set of Gen 4 rods other than in a Gen 4 motor from the wrecking yard. I don't know that I would buy rods that are outside of a motor that I didn't know about, because I mean, what you're going to pay for them and have them shipped, could you just get a set of aftermarket rods for that? Did your finisher blow up the Big Bang Big Block? No, we did run one, but we haven't run it to what the maximum is. And we're using a Holly with a distributor on it. Maybe I should consider selling both and going with an aftermarket block of some sort, Ellis aftermarket or big block Chevy aftermarket block at that point. A big block ultimately will make more power. And if you look at all the guys that are making like serious power, it's all big block stuff because it can be bigger. So if it can be bigger, it's going to make more power. So I don't know how much power you're wanting to make, but I mean, Nelson has packages that are 2,000 plus horsepower packages. He's got a 540 thing that I saw. And they're pretty serious. My local speed shop hated filling nitrous bottles for me because I had 10 or 12 when I was racing. Did you go in and just keep them all filled? Opposite of titanium rods, they don't look bent. Those are cool. They're nice and light too. You have to set something on top of those when you put them on the counter because otherwise they'll float away because they're so light. Just get Potter rods. I like Potter. I've used them a number of times to make custom rods for stuff. We used them to make a couple of the Bonneville motors, that were weird, like the Suzuki Kazashi and the Volkswagen, because we didn't have rods that were readily available that we wanted. So we had them make them. I also had Potter make some Honda rods for me when I was putting together a weird combination. And then I'm going to have them. Well, no, they're probably not going to have to do something on the mystery motor, I don't think. I don't remember you blowing up the small block. I haven't ever run a big bang on a small block. I mean, the only Gen 4 rods I can find are aftermarket. There's no such thing as an aftermarket Gen 4 rod. A Gen 4 rod and a Gen 3 rod are each things, and then the aftermarket rod is something else. There's no aftermarket Gen 4 rod or aftermarket Gen 3 rod. 427 LS7 or 454 LS or L8T 6.6. I would always pick the bigger one. Although I'm going to do some stuff with the L8T. And I also got a call from Brian Wolf and Evan Smith, and I'm going to go do something with them on the Godzilla. And so we might see some interaction with that kind of stuff. That sounds crazy, but 1,500 is feeling slow. I'm thinking 3,000. Yeah, you're definitely in aftermarket block stuff. Probably get bored out of that quick too. I'm thinking this might. Yeah, 3,000 a lot. I just hate running out, so I kept plenty on hand. Yeah. Olnar did the G10 rods. Cuckoo. Oh, that's who else did. Potter did my the Sprint turbo rods that I have. They also did those, so I've used them a few times. I forgot about that. Got Wiseco pistons and Potter rods. The Audi is all drive, but have to slip the six puck clutch in first gear for a good launch. Spins going into second. Has forged rods and pistons with 20 over first and second ring gaps. 24 thousandths is your ring gap. Does this thing have cams and ported heads and stuff? I felt weird starting to find 650 horsepower slow. It's just what you're used to. A buddy of mine told me Chevy made a high revving 6-liter back in late 2005 for a Z06 before they came out with the 7-liter. You mean as a development motor or something? Because it wasn't a production piece. They made a 5.7 for the Z06 that was the LS6 motor. The 6-liter stuff was LS2, and maybe they tested the 6-liter version of it before they came out with a 7-liter, if that's what you're talking about. Jimmy, does your Audi have ported heads and cams in it? Sonny's or Steve Morris or Proline, probably going to have to be one of my next. Yeah, if you're 3,000 horsepower, those would be good sources for that. Yeah, Sean, that motor should be more than enough to have fun with. What you need to go do is stop driving that and go drive slower things. And then when you get back in it, you're like, oh yeah, this is really the stuff here. Yeah, it was a test motor, and supposedly it was sold in a couple of cars. Those sorts of stories, I don't believe. I don't believe that they snuck a few development engines or whatever in a car. I would believe that they could have tested those engines in test vehicles, but not in. They wouldn't ever have something roll down an assembly line and put some sort of weird motor, because you have to stop the assembly line and stuff to make all that happen. There's no way that would happen. It would only be possible that they put it in the development pieces in those cars. Now, if those cars got sold later on for some reason, usually they don't. Usually they're not VIN cars, and they're not. They just get crushed. But yeah, not as a production piece. At least I don't think. That's my opinion. How about direct injection nitrous? Yeah, Mark, we talked about that earlier, that if you can get it really, really close to the valve, or as we talked about earlier, inside the combustion chamber, although the direct injection thing would be, maybe that wouldn't be hard to hook up. Maybe you just use the direct injection, regular injector nozzle and inject nitrous through that. Maybe that would work. But the pressure for the nitrous is not going to be very much. Not at all what the pressure is for the fuel that they're running in there. My Corvette doesn't feel slow. It's just making my Camaro feel slow. Don't know if I was lucky, but paired made me a set of KZ. I don't know who paired is. KZ 1000 rods that when I weighed, I couldn't beat the weight match that the two sets because they were so good. Is this a 4-cylinder rod thing? If it's a 4-cylinder, if all the rods weigh the same and all the pistons weigh the same, then you're good. You're good on the balance. And usually getting the weights right for rods, the manufacturers can do that spot on. And same thing with pistons. Oh, Potter. Okay, I get it. For the mountains, I have a A86. We did when we every time, because I would check them on these 4-cylinders. We would just check them and make sure that the rod weight was the same. And when we would weigh the rods, and if we could take a little bit off or whatever to make sure that they were right, but they were all spot on. I mean, they were all within 1 gram. I mean, they were right on. For the mountains, I have an A86 or an RX-7. I wonder if that's been sold. Wasn't a development car, but a press car with a Ringer engine that made more than production does. I wouldn't think that they would do that stuff anymore. That kind of thing could have been possible back in the day. The Shelby GLHS that they tested is rumored to have had more boost than production cars did and things like that. I don't think OEMs would do that anymore. I just think that in this litigious society that would be problematic. Lots of white smoke out of the tailpipe, shut down for a few hours. Then again, is it water vapor or coolant? And just verifying. Big Bang Nitrous videos coming soon. Push it till it pops. I did that once already on a 5.3. A dual plug Hemi, replace a plug. Yeah, the positioning it is not really the problem. I don't think, Mark. The getting the pressure to inject it in a direct injection form, I think would be the problem. That's what happens on my bike each summer. It feels fast again after a few months off of it, and then I drive a Toyota Prius as a daily. That should help. Although a Prius takes off pretty quick, it just doesn't charge hard on the big end. A slightly more aggressive cams, 210 versus 180. Okay. No porting on the 5-valve heads because they flow pretty well. Cool. 85 or 86 Corolla. I like those cars. Those are cool. Family, what's going on? Because cylinder pressure isn't nitrous hundreds of PSIs. Yeah, nitrous is about 1,000 PSI, but I think that the DI fuel is way beyond that. Yeah, we usually heat the bottles until the pressure is about 1,000 PSI. What do I think of the Vision as like my favorite Avenger? Is that what you're asking about? Like Wanda's boyfriend? I think the Vision's awesome. I think he was one of the most powerful Avengers. And he could pick up Thor's hammer, which right away, he's a good guy. That's like the litmus test. It's like, did he hold the door open for the lady? Is he a gentleman? Big Daddy Rattler cam? Yeah, I don't know what that is. Just give me cam specs. Cam speckaroonies. Then I can tell you. Mark, although that is a cool idea for not a direct injected nitrous steel, although it kind of have to be there. But if you made it look like it was the plug wire, except it was nitrous, then that would be super awesome. So the pressure is like 150 or more on souped up stuff. I'm not talking about timing it like a DI gas stuff. So you just want to inject it when there's no pressure or when there's limited pressure, so you could get away with not having to have 2 or 3 or 4 or 10,000 PSI. So you want to time it like port injection then? That would solve the pressure problem. L3 cam lift or push rod. Direct injection nitrous might cause problems having not mixed with fuel before entering the cylinder. It can be mixed. You could combine them together when you inject them, or you could inject them. You could inject them separately and have them mix in the combustion chamber. I don't think that that's going to be a problem. But we're not what Mark was talking about was not a direct injection for the. We're just talking about putting it in the combustion chamber, but not at a point where there would be excessive cylinder pressure. So it's basically just port injection. It just happens to happen. That's why when I was saying we just inject it right past the valve, because that way we don't have to machine into the combustion chamber, and we don't have to worry about that. Whatever we've machined in there sealing against ultimately what's going to be very high pressure. If we just have the tube, snake the tube down the intake port, we can inject it right into the combustion chamber. We'd have to argue whether or not it would be restrictive to airflow. About to put the BTR hot rod cam in my 5.3 and your risk of valve clearance. The Centurial, the 610 lift is not even a consideration for piston to valve. What your consideration for piston to valve is the duration, but a BTR hot rod cam fits stock piston to valve clearance without any problem. Tristan, Howard Rattler cam 242 250. So you're putting that in what? Not anything with a stock piston to valve clearance. This is Matt, by the way. I've been watching for years. Cool. Yeah, the hot rod cam is going to be good. Probably need some kind of thing to keep that from creating some sort of explosion hazard. Yeah, you wouldn't want the pressure back feeding into the system. That's what I was saying. If you just inject it in the runner, I think that you're good. I think that you'll get all of the benefits that you would get from having it in the combustion chamber. I shared your channel on a group on Facebook. Great. Thank you, Oliver. Big O representing. Representing all up in the house. One of those thoughts. No, Mark, that's why that's what it's like getting together with other car guys is like everyone sits around, it'd be really cool if we did this. And they're like, and that'd be cool. But wait, what about what about this? Or what about this? Or you just try it and like what we tried when you stick a firecracker, and this is when we were young, obviously, take a firecracker, stick it in a pomegranate and stand back the requisite 5 feet safety distance and light the firecracker, and you all stand back and go, okay, I wonder what this is going to happen. I wonder what this is going to do. And it just blows the pomegranate to smithereens. And everybody within 5 feet, which was all of us, has little red dots all over their clothes and all over their face and all over their body. Because that's what pomegranates do to you when they are accelerated at the speed of light. Howard, Nitrous, opinion on standalone fuel adders. I don't know what you mean by a standalone fuel adder. If you run nitrous, you do need to add fuel to run nitrous. So are you saying that you want to run a different kind of fuel, like high octane fuel only when the nitrous goes in? That works. Guys are doing that. The optimum way is to run good fuel on the whole setup. But guys get away with that. How would you make that cam work? Just put an aftermarket piston in that has a valve relief. or you could fly cut the existing pistons. And quite honestly, Tristan, if you're putting that cam in a 5.3, I don't think it's a good choice. If you tested a 4.7 cam swap on a small block Chevy, the guys at West Tech have, we've tested them. I've tested them on big blocks before, and the 4.7 swap doesn't do anything to power. High octane on separate tank. Yeah, guys do that. That works. Yeah, AT Enterprise, you can use the ISKI tool and put it in there and get your piston in the right position. And by the way, if you're going to do this, don't put the piston at TDC. At TDC. Because the piston is not going to be at TDC, excuse me, when it hits the valve. Got down to the fueling of my 6-liter, and all the receipts. Everyone has a different opinion. It works. I wouldn't suggest running 87 and then running good gas in it and hope that that's going to be okay. I'm hoping at least you're going to put 91 or 93 in it if you're running nitrous on it. Not that you might not be able to get away with, I wouldn't do it, but you might be able to get away with that on 87, depending on what your compression is and what your timing is. You just have to take away a bunch of timing. So we'll close out our poll at 69% saying yes. Better to inject it after the throttle body and closer to the valve. Just got home from work. I don't know the answer to the poll. It doesn't matter. It's all good. 93 octane, 255 in tank, and 255 under hood tank. Okay. Yeah, you can get away with that. I don't think I'd run a 500 shot on that, but you could run nitrous on that. We just run nitrous on just 91, so we know that will work. All right, Winston, we'll see you later. We only got a couple more minutes anyways. Question, if you find a 6-liter LS that is a flex fuel, are the injectors bigger than non-flex fuel? Yes, they are. So you can make a little more power with whatever the flex fuel size is. Michael, happy to help. Oh, I hear doggy down there. So I had to do some wiring today on my sprinkler setup. The dogs decided where the wiring runs, there's this little stairwell that goes down into an area that's like, I don't know, it's like about this big. You can't see it because my hands are outside the screen, but it's only like, I don't know, 5 feet, 6 feet or whatever. It's a little walk down area, but they like to go down there. And when they go down there and hide from each other while they're playing, they also like to chew on the wiring that runs across there. And so I went down there and they just chewed right through all the wiring. I'm glad that they didn't get shocked, but it was just for the sprinklers. So the sprinklers would have had to be on for that to work. So I had to go and cut it all up, splice everything, and connect all of the, I don't know, 15 or 18 connectors that were there. Because it was all the way through. They decided that no, this wiring harness is not going to live. We're going to go all the way through it. Tom, you're still at the shop, working hard. Ring gap is for max 250. I would still do 6 or 6.5 thousandths per inch of bore. Skull, what's up? Will I destroy my stock 292 Chevy using a little nitrous shot all day through traffic? It's in a big step band. No, if your motor is in decent shape and the tune is right on the nitrous, I don't think I'd run a big shot on a 292 Chevy. The other thing that's going to happen is you're going to be running a 292 Chevy at fairly low RPM, which means your 50 shot is going to be making a lot of torque. What kind of wire was it? The kind with rubber on the out or plastic on the outside of it, and it's it's a solid copper wire with that you use the wire nuts on. I didn't use those. I actually used I had a stash of the pink wire connectors, the crimp connectors. So I used those. Just got here, and from the beginning, but the longer the path, the more cooling it can do, in my opinion. Yep, James, we covered that stuff. But we're only talking about changing distance of like this much. So I don't know that that's going to change much. Maybe it is. How hard is it to tune a compound turbo setup on an LS? Is it worth the complication of doing it? I would take 2 steps back and ask why you're doing a compound turbo setup. What is it you're trying to achieve? Like, what do you want to do? Are you running a gigantic turbo, like a 2,000 horsepower turbo, and you're trying to get it to spool up with a smaller turbo? Or are you doing a compound turbo because it's cool? Like tuning the compound turbo on the engine dyno was not hard at all. Like tuning the wide open throttle stuff was exactly like doing any other turbo setup. On a blow-through carb, could a single fogger nozzle be used in the hat for a small 25-50 shot? Yeah, you could do it. You could do it in the hat, or I think because if you do it in the hat, you may introduce additional fuel as it goes by the boosters or it goes by the I think if I was going to do a carbureted deal and have a small shot, I think that I would do a plate underneath the carburetor for that. Stang, you're up in Arkansas. Would the ring gap increase over stock on 150 wet shot on LS1? If you're going to be running it a bunch, I would put ring gap in it. But we've run 150. Well, we've run much bigger shots than that just with motors right from the wrecking yard. We also broke that motor eventually. So if there's a lesson to be learned from that. Two more minutes. And everybody that's ordered a cam, all of your stuff has shipped out. Although I think it just got an order right. I saw an order just before I got on here. That one obviously hasn't been shipped out. Alaska. Oh, that's even cool. I mean, not that Arkansas is not also cool, but Alaska is definitely cool. My dad used to do a lot of fishing up there. After filing rings for the first time, I'll gladly pay someone the next time. It is, if you're hand filing rings and then checking them and hand filing and checking them, it's a bit of work. It's fairly time consuming. If you're going to be doing more than one, I mean, I'm lucky because West Tech has that and somebody sent it to them. The guys at Total Seal sent them the ring grinder, and that's so fast. It takes a multi-hour job and turns it into a multi-minute job because you just have to set it and just go. And especially like on these big bang motors, I just go like, okay, they're going to take off 30. You're good. No shade on Alaska, but yeah. I mean, on Arkansas, yeah. No, I'd like to go to Arkansas. I'd like to go there, and there's lots of good places to look for snakes there. I'm going to run stock ring gap. There you go. After filing rings for the first time. Yeah, I have done a lot with hand file where I put the file in the vise and then just slide the things. I try to do like both sides if you can, but sometimes that doesn't work. I've also done a whizzy wheel, which is really, really touchy, especially when you go from a stouter top ring and then to a molly or some kind of lesser material second ring. The amount that it takes off per revolution of the whizzy wheel, you can easily overcook it. So you got to be careful. I didn't even have to leave my house to catch a snake today. Nice. Little jerk was under my entertainment center. It wasn't paying rent or anything. What kind of snake was it, Sean? You had one in your house? I don't think I've ever found a snake in my house. I've seen them in garages before, but not inside the house. We had some skunks near our house last night. We could smell them. Live in Louisiana. Yep. Was it it wasn't a copperhead, was it? Or even a cottonmouth? Those are common there. Lots of water snakes and stuff there too. But also cool things like in Louisiana, you might have eastern diamondbacks there. Oh, garter snake. Yeah, those are. I'll definitely do push a turbo on the 292. So you're going to run a turbo on the 292 instead of nitrous? Or are you combining those on the 292? Because that's like extra frisky. We got some things coming up on the 292. Oh, and time for dinner. Using nitrous to spool a turbo on the 292. I wouldn't think that would be necessary. Those things are all low end, so it should be pretty easy to spool that. Arkansas bound. Got a black snake in my house a couple weeks ago. Not sure I got there. It's a black racer, 2 feet. I've never caught a black racer. We saw a few of them when I was in Florida. The one that I want to catch is not. The black racers are cool, but the one I want to catch is an indigo. Ever thought about dabbing into an old Ford 289 stuff? I have 289 videos up. I ran a hypo 289, and then we ran a couple of others as well too. So I've done a couple of 289s, and I owned a 65 hypo Mustang GT, 4-speed car, 4 series gears, pony interior, all the stuff. So I'm pretty familiar with that motor. And on that note, 2 minutes are up. It's time to go, but I'll see you guys all tomorrow.